I was born in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Moved to Baltimore when I was 3. I was raised in an alcoholic home. I don't remember having a bad childhood. I have mostly really fond memories of my childhood. I was raised Roman Catholic, and I went to Catholic school for the first 8 years of my life. What I picked up was a very big, scary God. I don't remember ever learning about a loving Savior and a loving Father. I remember preparing for confession, the sacrament of confession, and thinking, maybe that'll make me feel better. And it was such a temporary thing to go in there and go to confession. It was horrifying too. To be, in 3rd grade was when we did confession back then, which would make me like 8 or 9. Very limited understanding that I had of God was giving me a really low bar to attain to. When you're told that you will amount to nothing, it's really easy to attain that. We had a program that was called CYO, and I don't remember what that stood for, but it was for the youth. It was like a youth group. We were invited to go in 6th grade to experience it, and it was $2 to get in. And my girlfriend and I both had $2 from our parents, and we got dropped off, and we determined, instead of spending our $2, let's go buy some marijuana. That was my first experience with drugs in 6th grade. I was 12. I became sexually active at 15, and I associated sex with being a grown-up. I associated sex with love. The first time I had sex, and it was awful. It was an awful, it was painful. It wasn't like they painted it on TV at all. It was an unpleasant, uncomfortable, terrifying experience for a 15-year-old girl to go through. Found myself pregnant. It was a horrific experience for a 15-year-old girl to find herself alone in a clinic. I couldn't afford to get anesthesia, so I was awake for the whole thing as well. And very traumatic, and again, no talk of what will happen to you after this. What will happen to you emotionally after this? I got pregnant again and had another abortion within the next year. And then I found myself pregnant again by another guy. And I told him, I'm not having another abortion. I'm not going through that again. And he said, well, then we'll just get married. And he bought me an engagement ring the next day. Same guy, different shirt syndrome. I was looking for that father. I was always looking for that love. It was so elusive. I sought it in drugs. I sought it in the bottom of a bottle, and I sought it in relationship. I was always in a long-term relationship, or always looking for that. In between them, I was sexually active because that's what I thought love was, and I was always pursuing that as love. Somehow I got that message that that's what love looked like. And that we were pregnant, he said, let's try to make it work. Let's try to make this work. But I was so doubtful that it would work. And here I was facing again being a single parent again, and I'd hated that thought. I snuck out the back door. And my thought was, I'm going to need a beer to sleep tonight. And I sat on the edge of my bed looking at that mug of beer, and I heard very clearly and distinctly heard a voice say, you don't need that, go dump it out. And I stood up, and I was like, you're right. And I wasn't consciously thinking, who is that? I just got up, I went into the bathroom, and I dumped it into the toilet. I flushed the toilet, I stood there, I watched it go down, and that was the last drink I ever had. My experience now with my God, my loving God, is He makes a way. And I reached out to my pastor at my church, and I said I need some help walking through this new chapter. Pastor was kind enough to respond with some names and some phone numbers and a little footnote at the end of my mom would be a good person to talk to. As I was sharing my story, she called me out when I got to the point where I said, and I had an abortion. I never shared that I had more than one abortion. And she stopped me there and she said, Have you ever dealt with that? God had nudged me and nudged me and nudged me to say, it's time we opened this up. So I called her and got the woman's name and number, who ran a Bible study called Surrendering the Secret, which is for post-abortive women. God started putting this picture in my mind, and I don't draw. I can't even draw a decent looking stick figure, but this picture was like emblazoned in my head, and it was a picture of a little girl, I'd say about 3 years old, a chubby, cute little thing with pigtails, looking straight down a road. She's looking down a path, and the vision is the back of her looking down this long road, and she is got her arm up holding Jesus' hand, and Jesus is looking down at her, and he's got his rod and his staff. That's what this picture is. And as time progressed, I felt like I needed to draw this picture, and the most splendid picture, and I realized it isn't one of my babies, it was me. It was me. And boy, I was able, that was before I went through this abortion Bible study, and it gave me so much courage to know I never walk alone. He's holding my hand. I will be okay to walk through this, the toughest thing I've ever had to do. Walking through it, just trusting him. It was almost like I took his hand and said, I'm ready, let's go. 2009 is, for me, is when I really began a relationship with Jesus Christ, when I said the sinner's prayer, and really asked him, to come in. Face down on the rug, face down was my new prayer posture. Face down before the throne, not into a person, not into the phone, but before him, who then led me through into that healing of that abortion study, which to me was like the final piece of really being free of my chains. Every moment of every day, my breath is taken away by the love of my Savior. It really is just taken away. I no longer am looking for that love. I learned that that human love, that love that I've longed for, I found in Jesus Christ, and that is who I run to now as my source. I don't look for it in relationships. I've tried that to death, and that didn't work out. And I like how Dr. Phil says, how's that working for you? Now I know better. Now I have a place to go, and I feel so passionate about sharing that hope with other people. My story is so big and so vast, and I say my story has tentacles. I can speak into a lot of lives. I can speak hope and encouragement into a lot of lives. Look what he did for me. He can do this for you. I have peace that surpasses understanding. I have joy. My circumstances aren't that vastly different, but I am a new creation in Jesus Christ. I'm changed.